Luke is in the New Testament. If you're still learning your way around the Bible, it's divided into two categories, the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Old Testament starts with Genesis. It's before the birth of Jesus, and the New Testament starts with Matthew. It's from the birth of Jesus on. And so you have Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Luke, you say, well, who was he? He was a physician that was a Christ follower. And so he actually, he interviewed people. He was around the time of Jesus. And so these are eyewitness accounts of things that were seen. And he wrote this for a guy named Theophilus because he wanted him to be sure of the things that he had believed. And so these are just eyewitness accounts. And so in Luke chapter 10, we're going to begin to start right there. And when you think about worry and anxiety, I think about this, Christmas, the event that this is kind of dedicated to. And you think about Joseph and Mary and kind of their beginning, and they were engaged, and Mary was she was pregnant during their engagement, and Joseph knew that he wasn't the father. And so the Lord had to communicate to him that, that this is okay, that this is the thing that God is doing. And then at this time, it just so happened that the world was going to be taxed, and Caesar said, you've got to go back to where your heritage is. And so their heritage was in Bethlehem. And so now he's going to take his engaged, the woman he's engaged to, who's pregnant now, he's going to have to take her on this long journey. And so probably, I think about finances and all the things that probably went on with this season of their life. And just in the natural, how chaotic it must have seemed. Just in the natural of just, all of these things like what's going on in our world? What is God doing here? And all these things that are taking place. And man, this couldn't happen at a worse time. We've got to go where, and you just think about all those things. And yet in the middle of what we would look at and just call chaos, God was speaking to them. In the middle of probably what in the natural was a very hard season in their life. From a historical standpoint, we believe that Mary was a teenager at the time this was taking place. This may have been the hardest season of her life. And yet in the middle of all of these, like, oh God, you're going to do what now? Okay, what we're going to have to do? We're going to have to go where? That in the middle of this, that God was still speaking to them, and He was still working in them, and His plan was being carried out. It was being worked through them, and I think it's so easy to lose sight of that when we feel overwhelmed with stuff, and we feel overwhelmed with all of these issues that are going on. That sometimes I quit listening for God's voice in the middle of this. I quit listening to what He's trying to say because I'm so overwhelmed with everything that I'm having to deal with. And part of the challenge is so much of it feels like it's out of my control. Like, what do I do here? How do I affect that? And so Jesus one day was talking to a crowd of people. And in Luke 10, verse 38, it says, as Jesus and the disciples continued on their way to Jerusalem, or they quit doing their thing, and then they left, and they were on their way to Jerusalem. They came to a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed Him into her home. Her sister Mary sat at the Lord's feet listening to what He taught, but Martha was distracted. Everybody say distracted. Well, I wonder what she was distracted by. I wonder if she was like, hey, I can't wait till this guy's done. Or is she like, did she just rob the latest 7-Eleven? What's she distracted by? And actually it says that she was distracted by the big dinner she was preparing. So it wasn't like she was doing anything bad. As a matter of fact, for some of you, does this sound like your Christmas day? That somebody's got to make the big dinner. We've got all of these people coming over and all this stuff that we have to do. So she was distracted by that. She came to Jesus and said, Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you? So she's going to Him and saying, this feels awfully unfair. Lord, I know it's got to feel unfair to you. Doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits here while I do all the work? Tell her to come and help me. Now, I love this next part because I don't know if you've ever had this, but I've had those moments where I've talked to the Lord about certain things, and I thought surely He would be on my side, and He wasn't. You ever had that? I've shared with you the one moment where this one person had really done something to me, and it really kind of wounded me a little bit. And I wasn't wounded where I was like hurt. I was wounded where I'm like, I'd whip him, God, but I think you could do a better job of it. So, you take care of it. And so you're kind of talking to the Lord, and it's almost like you're wondering what great act of vengeance He's going to take out on them. And so I'm praying that, and he doesn't want to take an act of vengeance out on them. Matter of fact, he gives me this God thought, and he basically says, I don't feel about them like you do. I'm not mad at them. I love them. Yeah, what they did is wrong, but I love them even in their brokenness, just like I love you in your brokenness, and you like that, right? Okay. So this was one of those moments that Martha came to him thinking that he was going to be on her side, and he actually corrects her. And she said, isn't it unfair? Shouldn't she help me? And so, but the Lord said to her, my dear Martha, you are worried and upset over all these details, over all this stuff, all these things. You're worried and upset about all of it, and there's only one thing. Everybody say one thing. There's only one thing worth being concerned about, and Mary has discovered it, and it will not be taken away from her. This is what I've discovered about worry in my own life, and maybe this will help you. Worry is a distraction from what matters. We can just be so overwhelmed. And here's the challenge. It's kind of like Martha. It wasn't like what she was doing was something bad. I mean, the problem is, the reason why worry is so deceptive, because many times what we're worrying about feels noble. Like around Christmas, it feels noble. It's not like when you worry about Christmas presents, you're not like thinking, my family better get that stuff that I want them to get for me, or it's going to be on when it's... I mean, that's usually not what we're thinking, right? I mean, usually it's like, man, I hope I have enough money to get my kids presents. I hope we have enough money to do this for my family. And because it's about somebody else, it almost feels noble in how we deal with it. And yet the truth of the matter is that even in that, as noble as that feels, it becomes a distraction about this moment right here in this season. And what this season is really about, and here's what it's about, is that God loves you so much that in your brokenness and in your chaotic world, that when everybody else would step back and go, just step away, that He entered and showed up at that moment. And sometimes for me, and I think we're probably a lot alike, I lose sight of that because I get so overwhelmed and so taken up by all these other things in my life. They distract me from what God wants to say to me in this moment. They distract me from what God is doing in this moment. In the middle of this Christmas season, with all of the dinner plans that you're making, with all the travel plans, with all of the relationship things you're trying to decide, with all the gifts that you're trying to figure out a way and people you're trying to think of a way to buy for, let me just encourage you to not be so overwhelmed by all those good things that you totally miss out on the God things that He wants to do in your life right now. It's so easy, isn't it? Because it's not like we're doing anything bad or wrong. And our concerns are for other people and other things, and then we can also be mad at other people when they don't take on that same concern. Hey, how come you're not helping? How come you're not doing? And we have to be reminded that in this moment, like with Martha, that Jesus was there. That God had showed up to her place. And in all of her serving, and in all of her doing, and in all her laboring, that she never stopped to think, what's He doing here? What's He want? What is it He wants to say to me in this moment? Number one is this, is that worry is a distraction from what matters most. Let me ask you this question. What are you missing out on because you're worried? What season, what moment are you missing out on? You could be engaging with somebody right now. You could be connecting with people in your life, and yet for other things. And again, not bad things you genuinely want to do because you just want to make their world better, but in the middle of all of this, you're missing out on this opportunity. This moment, it seems like it's all you can think about. And maybe maybe you're spending so much time trying to have the perfect Christmas that the people that you're trying to have it for, you're really making them miserable in the process. It's possible, right? And again, we mean well. But sometimes we have to step away from all these distractions and be reminded of what Jesus told Martha and said, look, there's only one thing that really matters here. And that is what God's wanting to do in your life right now. and who He's wanting to do that with. Our lives can just go by. They can just, the pages time can turn, and just we can look back, and all of a sudden we've pushed through another season, doing good things and just kind of the everyday stuff and busyness of life, and we've missed those moments to engage and to say, let's see what God wants in this moment. Let's make this moment special. Not by all the things we have, but by just recognizing that it is this moment. I think about this, that yesterday was a day that I had worried about many days ago, and it's come and gone. And today may be a day that you've worried about, and it's here. And tomorrow could be a day, but at some point in your future, it'll probably be your yesterday, and you'll be past it, and you will have made it. But worry is such a distraction from what matters most. Let's look at number 2. If you would, go with me, if you would, you're in Luke 10. Go to Luke 12. It's 2 chapters over. Jesus was talking to a group of people here, and He was really talking to them about, where their trust is and all those kind of things. And so He even told this story about a guy that had built all of this stuff. And then, He said, hey, look, my life is full. And he stored up, he built these barns so he could take all of his stuff in. And He said, I'm going to have a good life. And that night it says that he died. And Jesus said that was foolish. In verse 21 it says this, a person is a fool to store up earthly wealth but not have a rich relationship with God. Now He didn't say that you were a fool to store up worldly wealth. He didn't say that you were a fool to be a saver and that kind of thing. That's okay. Matter of fact, Proverbs talks about that. But He did say that to do that but not have a rich relationship with God is foolish. And so then, after He said that, He turned to His disciples. He's talking to these guys. He's like, look, it's foolish to have all of this stuff and not have a rich relationship with God. And then He turned to His disciples as if He's giving them kind of the inside, the lowdown. And He says this. He says, Jesus turned to His disciples and said, that is why I tell you not to worry about everyday life, whether you have enough food to eat or enough clothes to wear. For life is more than food, and your body more than clothing. Look at the ravens. They don't plant or harvest or store food in barns, for God feeds them, and you are far more valuable to Him than any birds. So, I think about this passage a lot of times, and like sometimes it's been cold outside, and I've kind of seen, the birds, flying around and that type of thing, sparrows around here, and I'm like, it's really just an example of God's care. And Jesus right here, he didn't say that the birds don't matter to our Father. Our Father's so good that He even takes care of them. He just said this, that even though they matter to Him, that you matter more. And if He'll take care of them, then He'll take care of you. And so He went on to say, you're far more valuable to Him than any birds. Can all your worries add a single moment to your life? Can your worries add a single moment to your life? And if worry can't accomplish a little thing like that, what's the use of worrying over bigger things? That's really part of the folly in worry, is that it really doesn't accomplish anything, does it? It just steals from us. It just robs us. It robs us of time. It robs us of moments. If we do it too much, it can rob us of health. And it doesn't solve anything. It doesn't fix anything. Jesus said if it can't accomplish a little thing like that, if it can't accomplish just taking care of your basic needs, then what's the use of worrying over bigger things? I put this down. Can all your worries, think about the issues we have over the holidays. Can all your worries pay your bills? No. Can all your worries give you more time? No. Can all your worries resolve conflict between you and family members? Can they fix that stuff? Can all yours? They can't. And if worry can't accomplish little things like that, then what's the use of worrying over the bigger things? Whatever it is that we need, whatever it is that I need, whatever it is that you need, we have to know this: worry can't solve it. It doesn't fix it. That we spend all this time worrying, and all we've done is when we come out of that thing. I don't know about you guys, but when if I find myself worrying, I kind of get that glazed look. And my family knows that even though I'm there physically, that I'm really not engaged with them. And they're like, "What's wrong with you?" Or the kids are, "Hey, what's wrong with Dad?" He's kind of, he's just not really engaged. And when I finally kind of snap out of it, my problem is still there. And the only thing that's gone is that moment that I had with them. It's such a thief. It's such a thief. We say, well, so Pastor Rick, are you just saying don't worry? Hey, thanks for the advice. Just don't worry. That made it all go away, right? No. What I'm saying is that Philippians 4:6 says, don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Let your requests be made known unto God, giving Him thanks for all the things that He's done. Then the peace of God that passes understanding will show up. If I'm spending a lot of time praying about an issue, it just tells me one thing. You know what that is? I haven't been praying about it. If I spend time praying about it, then it's almost like it's worry repellent. It's like, it just kind of keeps it away. And so there are times I know I just get overwhelmed. I begin to think about these things. How are we going to pay this bill? How are we going to be able to do this? How are we going to fix this situation? What's going to happen here? And there's things that in some ways are kind of out of my control. And the truth of the matter is that it doesn't solve anything. In this season, if there's things about Christmas that for you specifically, not only does it amplify your challenges, but it just maybe even add a few more to it, that whatever it brings with it, that you're feeling this pressure, that worry's not going to fix it for you. It's not going to fit. It just overwhelms you. And can we be real transparent here? That some of the things that we worry about are because we put these self-imposed expectations on ourselves that miss the point. That miss the point entirely. And maybe that's what we need to look at, is not how this is going to happen, but this should even be our expectation. That the real question is that what this is about? And so to be able to do that and be able to look at that and be able to step away from it and go, I'm okay if this doesn't happen, because this is what matters. And this worry isn't going to solve this thing. And if I'm worrying about it, I'm not praying about it. And if I start praying about it, it'll help me not worry about it. Number 2 is this: is that worry is not a solution to your problems. Let's look at number 3, and we'll close with this. Go with me, if you would, to Romans 15. You're in Luke right now, and so the next book over is John, and then Acts, and then Romans. Romans 15, verse 13. Now, Romans it's a letter that a guy named Paul wrote to some Christians, and he was really kind of explaining to them that we're saved by faith, by grace through faith in Jesus, and that it's not by religion. There's this relationship that we have with God, and so he's kind of explaining that. And so this is the last part of this letter. He's kind of closing it up, and he's writing this to some people he knows. And so in verse 13, he said this. I'm going to read 13 through 15, and then I'm going to come back to 13. He said, I pray that God, the source of hope, will fill you completely with joy and peace because you trust in Him. Then you will overflow with confident hope through the power of the Holy Spirit. I'm fully convinced, my dear brothers and sisters, that you are full of goodness. You know these things so well you can teach others all about them. Even so, I've been bold enough to write about some of these points, knowing that all you need is this reminder. In other words, he said, look, I know you know a lot of this stuff, but I want to remind you of this. And that's kind of where I'm at with this. Is I know a lot of these things that we know, but it's good to be reminded about it, right? I mean, last night I'm sitting there kind of doing, I was sitting at the table just kind of going over my notes again and just kind of going through some thoughts, and I found myself worrying about something. Isn't that wild? I'm getting ready to give you a message on worry, and I get distracted from what I'm thinking. I'm worrying about a situation, and it's kind of like the Lord was like, hey, back to your notes. Oh yeah, worry's not a solution, is it? Okay, yeah. So can we change the subject, Lord? Can we do this? So, but I mean, it's one of those things that even in the middle of doing a message on worry, I find myself, in the middle of this, and so I have to be reminded of it. We have to be reminded of it. So let's look at verse 13 again. He said, I pray that God, the source of hope. So first of all, God is your source for hope. If you're feeling hopeless right now, go to Him. He'll give you hope. He's the one that will bring hope in you. I pray hope over your world right now, hope over your life. And then he went on to say, will fill you completely with joy and peace. Now those are Christmas words, right? So he said, I pray that the God of hope, the God who's the source of hope, will fill you completely with joy and peace because. Everybody say because. Say it again, say because. Well, so because, why is He going to fill me with joy and peace? Because my situation's not there anymore? Is that why? No, because here's what I found out about life. Here's the deception, is that we think when we get past this deal that life is going to be good. When I get past this challenge I have right now and I get on the other side of it, things will be good. And guess what I've discovered? When I get on the other side of it, there's another situation that's rolling up its sleeve. It's like, you ready? And I'm like, can we wait like 30 days before I do this? Nope. You go through them, I'm your next battle. That's how it feels sometimes. Does it feel that way to you? And so it feels that way to me sometimes. It's kind of like, oh. So obviously getting past this situation does not bring about joy and peace in my life. Well, why do I have joy and peace? Because you trust in Him. So we don't get joy and peace because we get through this moment. We get joy and peace because we trust in Him. That the key to peace in your situation right now, the key to being on the other side of worry in your situation right now is not getting through this. Oh man, as soon as Christmas is over, then we'll be good. There's no country song. If we make it through December, everything's going to be all right, I know. I mean, how many of you remember that song? Yeah, a few of you are old. So anyway, here's the thing, is that, so I mean, yeah, and so we think about that moment, that thing that when I get past this, things will be good. It's a lie. Hope and peace are not found in getting on the other side of this problem. They're found in putting trust in God. He said again that He said, then you'll overflow with confidence and hope and peace through the power of the Holy Spirit. He said, He will fill you completely with joy and peace because you trust in Him. Here's the challenge with trust, is that trust means that I don't know everything. God, I don't know how you're going to do this. I don't know what the outcome of this is. I don't even know what I'm supposed to do next. I remember back in, I'm from here, and we were in Clovis, New Mexico for 17 years in student ministry. And around 2002 or 2003, I really began to be stirred up and want to come back. This is my home. Tina and I got to go on a vacation. Somebody actually really blessed us with like airline tickets so late. We got to go to Maui, and people said, how was it? I said, it was really cool, but I was glad to be back in Oklahoma. And so this is where my heart is. And so I remember in 2002 and 2003 thinking that, I want to go back there. I want to get my life there. And so it I was praying about it, and just over time and for the next couple of years, just kind of praying and talking to God about it. And towards the end of 2005, just some things happened where I knew it was kind of time that I needed to talk to my pastor and say, hey, look, I think this is what we're supposed to do. And so we began to have that conversation. So we knew that in 2006, at some point, we were going to leave there and come back to my home, and we were going to start a church. And so we started Cedar Point in October 2006. But I remember laying in bed at the end of 2005 and the end of 2006, and we'd kind of paid our dues as far as been through all of our hard times, all of our hard places financially, and we're finally kind of coming on the other side of it. And I remember Tina going, and I appreciate her heart, man. She was like, if baby, this is where you think we're supposed to do this, I'll go. I trust you. I trust you'll help from God, that kind of stuff. But then one night she asked that question. It wasn't a bad question. It didn't mean that she wasn't following God or anything like that. But it's a question you need to ask. She goes, hey, I did just kind of have one question. I'm like, oh yeah, what's that? She goes, how are we going to pay our bills? And I was like, that's a great question. And when you just pray about it and you come back with an answer. No, I mean, I was like, I don't know yet. I mean, if I have to if I have to do something else besides ministry, then I'm willing to do that. I don't know what the answer to that is, but it really was one of those moments that it wasn't one of those things we just kind of jumped into and said, hey, I had this thought last night and I'm going to quit my job. I mean, it was such a big deal. I spent time praying about it and talking to God about it. But even with all that, even though I felt like that, it was like He was like, yes, I didn't have the answer to all of those questions. And that's what trust is, right? I mean, trust means I don't know how you're going to do this, but I trust you. I don't know when I get there what's going to happen, but I trust you. And so I'm going to turn loose of control in this moment because I find peace not when I'm in control. I find peace not when I'm on the other side of this situation. I find peace when I trust you. I don't have all the answers. I don't know how we're going to do this. And in the middle of wondering what God's plan was for us, I remember my dad got sick, and that was one of those things where I'm like, I don't know how the outcome of this is going to be. And then our kids were in that season of life where they learn how to drive and all that. And they were dealing with their own challenges. They're kind of navigating their way through, and I'm trying to be a good dad and a good son, a good pastor, good friend, good husband. I don't know the answer to all that stuff, but there's sometimes you just kind of have to step away from all of these pulls that are on you, all of these expectations that you put on yourself, and just say, God, I don't want to get all this. I don't know all this. I just trust you. And so sometimes you say, how's this going to happen? I don't know. I trust Him. And today is a testimony that I can trust Him, because yesterday was a day that one time I worried about. And tomorrow will be a testimony that you can trust Him, because today was a day that at one time you worried about. You can trust Him. Sometimes it's good for my soul to close my eyes and just say, Lord, I can trust you. I can trust you in this situation. I can trust you in this moment. And my mind is going, well, how are we going to do this? And sometimes, I'm trying to answer those questions. Sometimes I go, I don't know. I trust Him. When I say that, and I say it again, I trust you in this situation. I trust you in this situation. My circumstances don't necessarily change, but His peace shows up in my life. Not because things have changed, but because I trust Him. I trust you with this holiday, Lord. I want it to be what you intended for it to be. For me, it needs to be a recognition of how far you'll go to be a part of my world. It was because you're not a God that watches me from a distance. It's not because you're a God that's indifferent to me. It's not because you're a God that's angry at me. It's because you're a God that wants to be God with me. And so you showed up as a baby in this obscure part of the world that was not the seat of power politically, nor militarily. It wasn't even the economic focus of the world at that time. But it was in a place that would say to all of humanity, anyone can come. And I get caught up in these self-imposed expectations and these responsibilities, and I lose sight of that moment. It's a reminder of the goodness of God and how exceedingly great His love is for you. When I see that, I see Christmas in a different way. It's no longer something I'm trying to get through on the other side of. It's something I'm so grateful for how good He is to each one of us.